Family, what is going on? I'm so happy that you decided to be with us today. It means the absolute world to us that we are reaching people all over the world, from the valley and beyond. Listen, we got a special message today that I think is going to bless you. Did you know that sometimes even a box can preach? I think God's got something to say to you. I see you on the other side.
So I'm so happy again to be with you all as we continue our sermon series Stride. We've been walking with these biblical characters as they've had these moments of intentional forward progression, right? These interesting times. John chapter 9, there's this blind guy. We don't know his name, don't know his social security number, but for whatever reason, he shows up. Jesus shows up one day, and they think that perhaps that the reason why he's blind is because either he sinned or his parents sinned. And Jesus says, no, it ain't got nothing to do with sin. It has nothing to do with that. As a matter of fact, this happened to him so that the glory of God will be worked and displayed through him. And you remember what happens. This blind man, still blind, has to walk to a sea. It has to go to a pool of Siloam that literally means sent. And the question you and I have to raise is, how did he get there? But isn't that sometimes what striding with God is? It includes you having to walk even when you can't see. Then I told you on last week, I said, hey, even though sometimes, God has to cut the lights on, there are also times when it's not that you're crazy, it's just that you're consecrated. And because a life of consecration is very, very different sometimes. That's why people look at you differently and judge you by different monikers and metrics, because you're different. But it's not that you're any better than anybody. I'm just consecrated. And that's what we saw last week in the book of Joshua with these children of Israel, these new believers, as they are about to go and possess the land that God promised to them. God had promised them a land. They think they're about to walk right into the land. That's Joshua chapter 6 is the chapter that we all love so much, because Joshua 6 is when they march around the walls of Jericho. They shout and the wall comes down. But before you get there, when you read in Joshua chapter 5, God makes a very interesting command. Before you get ready to possess the land, God says, hey, circumcise all the men. Remember, don't spiritualize that. Don't overlook that reality. Circumcise the men. Circumcise the grown men. Circumcise with no anesthesia and medical license the men. And eventually what will happen, because before they can go and take the land I promised to them, if they don't change who they are, then they'll change Jericho into Egypt. I'm so happy to be with all of y'all as we continue this series of Stride. And I told you last week the reason we stopped in Joshua chapter 5 because I was on my way to Joshua chapter 6. And I'm still on my way to Joshua chapter 6. But I thought about it for a moment. Hey, I'm the pastor, so I can take my time. Right? This month, family, makes 6 months being married to my wife, Lady Nikisha. And some of you all have been asking, hey, where is she today? She is currently working in Charlotte, North Carolina. I went, dropped off at the airport this morning, and then I came to service. But because it's 6 months and she's on the plane, she can't see or witness anything that's going on right now, right? But I want to celebrate our 6-month anniversary, and I need y'all to help me. All right, I need y'all to help me. So, because when it's 6 months, I think because 6 months is not quite a year, but that I probably should get her something. I just maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Y'all will tell me about it later. It just maybe. But I don't know. I don't want to start nothing I can't finish, So That's the thing. She gonna have to wait a while after this anyway. Okay, so I need y'all's help in selecting a gift for Lady Nikisha. Okay. So y'all gonna help me? Y'all gonna help me out today? Okay. So first, let's see what we got under here to help. All right. Oh yeah, we got Apple. How y'all feel about this? Yeah. You know, didn't the new iPhone just come out? The new, right? You know, yeah, cardboard box with a white paper taped to it, and somebody wrote green apple. What do y'all think? If you think that Lady Nikisha deserves this for her 6-month anniversary, is it 6-month anniversary? 6-month anniversary, raise your hand. Come on, where you are in the building. Oh, okay, I like this. Okay. All right. So that's number one. Let's go back. Okay. All right. Let's try. Let's see what's under here. Let's see what we have. All right. Now, hold up now. She said, give her all of it. I'm like, wait a minute. We got other months to go. Okay. All right. So that was that. Some of y'all said this, but what about this one? What about this is a different, I don't know. It's a different box, got different colors and different lettering on it. I don't know. It may cost a little bit more than this other one. So what do y'all think? Raise your hand if this is the box, if this is our gift. All right. All right, we got one more. All right. So the final one is this one. This one. Not quite a box, but an envelope, an unidentified envelope. So now I need y'all to play fair, because some of y'all been cheating. How many of y'all think that we should go with the unidentified envelope? Come on, raise your hand. Okay. She just stood up and everything, you know. I don't know if you sit down, okay? It's interesting, right? Because here it is. You have this cardboard box. That's actually a box for somebody's Doc Martens that I put white paper on and wrote Apple. It isn't even real, right? It's not. And then you have this other box, a box designer from this store called Gucci. Some of y'all know about Gucci, all right? And then this, an envelope, unidentified, but she would just have to trust whatever's on the inside of the envelope. Boxes, containers. They're interesting because we make judgments on boxes and containers depending on a number of things, on the color of the box, the shape of the box, the size of the box, even the color of the box. But you know, what's even more important than all of those other characteristics of the box is that the value of the box is dependent on what's inside of the box. Because that's where the box gets its value from. And I tell y'all, you know, y'all didn't do good. Some of y'all did well if you chose this. Because this is important because my wife is a fan of Brandy. And if you know, Brandy and Monica are on tour right now. And so what she doesn't realize is that I bought her tickets for her and her friend to go see Brandy and Monica sing at the Boys Mind tour. But if you judge the boxes wrong, you wouldn't have realized that actually this was more valuable than both of those put together. See, on last week, we had this conversation around the children of Israel at this place called Gilgal. Yahweh is preparing to take the land that was promised to them, but strangely enough, before they go, Yahweh, God commands them, circumcise the men with flint knives. It's a crazy request. It's not helping the people of God to prepare for war. It's actually preparing them for worship. And that's good, but that's not how you conquer territory. You conquer land and enemies with swords and spears and shields. And God almost appears to know nothing about warfare. And we learned that it's by this act of holy consecration that sets them aside to be prepared for the promise that God has for them. And maybe that's what God is calling us, this church, individuals, to. God is calling us to a season of consecration in anticipation for what God has for us in the future. You see, I planned this week to speak at length about the stride in Joshua chapter 6, but again, my plans were derailed because there was this one little word with 3 letters that would not let me go. Notice it. Turn your Bibles to Joshua chapter 6. You don't have to stand. Joshua chapter 6. Joshua chapter 6 beginning at verse 4. Joshua chapter 6 beginning at verse 4. When you find it, signify by saying amen. Joshua chapter 6 beginning at verse 4 reads like this: have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horn trumpets in front of the ark. But on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times while the priests blow the ram's horn. Then drop down to verse 6. At verse 6 it says, so Joshua son of Nun summoned the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant and have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horn in front of the ark of the Lord. He said to the troops, move forward, march around the city, and have the armed men go ahead of the ark of the Lord. Family, while I was reading Joshua chapter 6, it was that little word ark that was preaching to me. Ty, I know you trying to get to marching around the walls of Jericho, but you need to go to FIBC in a couple of days and preach to them about some things that I have to say. And so that's what I want to talk about and tag this little message here today. I won't be before y'all long at all. I just want to talk to you about a box that preaches. I just want to talk today about a box that preaches, a box that preaches. Sometimes inanimate, small things with no life have a way of being able to preach to you and I want to talk today about a box that preaches. When we come to Joshua chapter 6, please note it says that the ark of God, literally in the Hebrew, the word literally translates into English as box or chest. And here I am trying to get ready to preach, and the box started to talk to me, Pastor, can you please say something about me, because I want to preach to your people here today. And so I brought the box with me today because I think that there are a couple of things you and I can learn that can inform the way we can stride into new territory if we understand some things about the box. The first thing you need to understand is about the box's position. Notice verse 4, the box's position. Have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horn trumpets in front of the ark. In the book of Joshua, the ark is referenced some 30 times. It is probably the central component to the book. It's almost as important as any other figure, human figure in the book. And this new generation of Israelites are people that have been led and fed by God. Remember, they are led by God specifically in the wilderness. Do you remember in Exodus chapter 13, they are led by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, a pillar of cloud to protect them from the direct rays from the sun and provide some comfort and protect them from dehydration because it's so hot in Phoenix, Arizona. A pillar of fire in the night so that when they couldn't see, the light from the fire would provide a visible path and warm them when the temperature would drop at nighttime. These two pillars were dynamic in nature. They didn't have to ask. It didn't have to make a request or ask for permission. When it was light, when it was light outside, it was leading by a cloud. When it got dark at night, it became a fire. It was God's manifestation that was switching and changing based upon their needs of where they were currently. Don't that sound like God for somebody here today? That sometimes in our lives, God just automatically knows what you need, when you need, and how you need it, and where you need it. And that's how they are led in the book of Exodus. They are led by a pillar of fire by day, a pillar of fire by night, and a pillar of cloud by day. But verse 21 of Exodus 13, it says that the Lord went ahead of them. Ahead of them. The Lord went ahead of them. While the Lord is changing, while the Lord's manifestation of God's presence in the midst of the wilderness is changing based upon what they need and how they need it, where they need it, God also is leading them from the front. FIBC shout from the front. The Lord was in front of them. But when we get to Joshua, preachers, they have healed from their circumcision, and Joshua is given revelation that even Jericho is holy ground, and that God was there to take them over into new territory. But please note the instructions that God gives to Joshua to give to the people. God instructs how they are to get to the land. They are to march around the walls of Jericho for 6 days. But then on the seventh day, they are to march around the city 7 times while the priests blow the horn. So Joshua and the men of war, the warriors, they get in the front, and then behind them are the priests with the horns, and then behind the priests with the horns is the Ark of the Covenant, and then behind the Ark of the Covenant is the rear guard. I tried one more time because the whole church missed what I was trying to say. You see, in the book of Exodus, God led them from the front, but here it is, they are about to take new territory, and God gives instructions to Joshua that, hey Joshua, I know I led your ancestors a specific type of way, but now that we are here about to take over new territory, I want you to put the men of war in the front, put the priests behind them, put the Ark of the Covenant behind them, and then put the other soldiers behind them. I thought about that for a moment. I said that's almost problematic because in the Exodus, God is always leading from the front. God is always leading from the front so that everybody can see what God is trying to do. But what do you do, family, when sometimes God is leading from unexpected places? What do you do when God decides to lead from the middle of your life? Why position the ark? Why position this ark, which serves as the tangible representation of God's presence? Why put the ark in the middle rather than putting the ark in the front as God had already done in the past? You see, I thought this was interesting, and so I was doing my research, preachers, and one scholar says that this form of leadership was actually a form of something called locomotion. You do know something about locomotion, don't you? You know, old school locomotives are trains that use power to generate steam, and that steam would push pistons back and forth that would then turn the wheels, and typically the power source would be in the front of the train, and it would pull pull the train to wherever the conductor was trying to get them. But sometimes, depending on the length and the size of the train, more power and pistons would be situated in the middle of the train, so that, hear me, while one engine is pulling at the front, there's another one pushing from the middle. Oh, I like this, family, because however, whether in the middle or the front, the train still keeps moving. Why? Because the power source doesn't have to be where you expected. You just got to be connected. That sounds so good. I'm going to try it one more time. The power source never has to be where you expected. It just matters if you are connected. Why? Because God has a way sometimes of leading us in the most strange ways. God has a way of leading us in the most strange time. God has a way of directing us from the strangest of places, directing us from the dark, guiding us from the pain, leading us from affliction, pulling us from the struggle, pushing us from agitation. But the key to it all, family, is I don't care what you're going through, you got to make a resolve in your life to always stay connected. I don't know who I'm talking to, but is there anybody's testimony that can look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, if you really knew everything I've been through, if you knew all the tears I had to cry at night, if you knew the times I wanted to wave the white flag of surrender, if you knew all the times that they were really telling the truth about me, if you knew all the times I wanted to give up, but the only thing that held me together wasn't my own power, wasn't my own accreditation. No, it was the fact that I stayed connected to a God that sits high and looks low. I stayed connected to a God that says no weapon that's formed against me shall be able to prosper. I stood and stayed connected to a God that said, lo, I will be with you always, even until the end of the earth. No matter where you are, just stay connected. God leads them from an unexpected places, from an unexpected place, because sometimes with new generations, God has to lead differently. Hold on, because I'm about to bother some people here, and I'm about to upset some people here, and I know I only been pastor for 3 weeks, but you got to be careful to have 8-track music in a streaming generation. I'm not telling you that the music ain't good, but the form and the medium by which the music has to come through has to change. I'm telling you that sometimes God leads differently based upon the new generation that is coming apart. And I got to be honest with y'all, that's one of the black church's biggest handicaps, is that we get married to not to tradition, but to traditionalism. And you know what traditionalism is. Traditionalism will allow your church to die because you don't want to change some things. Traditionalism will allow for things to go awry because it was done this way for 30 years and I'm going to keep on doing it this way. But how in the world are you going to take new territory if you won't be open to the new ways that God is trying to lead you in this particular season? Sometimes God leads from different places. Sometimes God will lead from different places. That's what the box wanted me to tell you. That's what the ark wanted me to tell you. That sometimes God is going to lead you from a different place. But then there's more here, because not only pay attention to the position of the box, but look at the box's past. There are several allusions to this box. There's several allusions to the ark. There's several allusions to the chest. It can literally, it's referred to a number of different ways in the Old Testament. It's referred to either as the ark of God or the ark of Yahweh, or my favorite, the ark of testimony. Yeah. You see, it first shows up in Exodus chapter 25. When God gives instructions to God's people, God tells Moses, they are to make a sanctuary for me so that I may dwell among them. God has a desire to dwell amongst God's people. And God says, I'm going to give you the environment by which I'm going to meet you, Moses. I'm going to give you the environment. So he is to take acacia wood 45 inches long and 20 inches wide and 7 inches high. He is to overlay it with both pure gold on the inside and out. He is to make poles of acacia wood and then overlay them with gold. And the poles were to be placed on the side of the box so that although the box was large, it could always be carried by those who were strong enough to carry it. Then he is to create and make a mercy seat of pure gold that is 45 inches long and 27 inches wide. Two cherubim of gold, and they are to be at the two ends of the mercy seat. The cherubim are to have their wings facing spreaded and facing one another, going towards the mercy seat. You see, the mercy seat is supposed to sit on the top of the ark, but because ain't none of y'all say nothing, I got to break this down for a moment, because I thought y'all were going to allow me to go on to where I was trying to go, because that makes me happy, because the mercy seats sits on the top of the ark. Family, do you know what the mercy seat was used for? The mercy seat was used when they would have an animal, a sheep or a goat. It was something called a scapegoat. On the Day of Atonement, they would have the sheep or the goat, and they would kill the lamb, and then one lamb, after they would ask for forgiveness, they would send off into the wilderness as a sign that God has now forgotten their sin. But the blood from the now dead lamb would be sprinkled on the mercy seat as a sign that their sins had been forgiven. And the reason why y'all ain't moved yet is because you don't know what mercy really is. Grace is when God gives us what we don't deserve, but mercy is when God withholds from us what we. Who am I talking to in the building? I know I got some grace cases in the building. I know I got some grace cases that are watching me right now, but is there anybody that can say, yeah, Pastor, I thank God for grace, but if you only knew about mercy. I'm talking about the times when God held stuff back from me that I really deserved. I didn't deserve the house I lived in. I was texting and driving and still didn't have a car accident. I was sipping on something before I got in the car, and God still let me make it home. My children don't deserve it. God, sometimes we're grateful for mercy. Y'all sit down. Y'all sit down. It's the mercy. It's a box. It's the mercy seat that sits on top of the ark. But the question that you and I have to ask is, what's on the inside of the box? Remember, I told you that the value of a box is always dependent on what's inside of the box. You see, what's inside of the box is Moses is instructed by God to give these tablets of testimony. You see, these tablets of testimony are copies of the law that were given to Moses. But another thing you find inside of the box is that there was a jar of manna that was there as well. You remember when manna shows up in the history of Israel, remember it was the primary means by which God is going to provide for them in the midst of the wilderness. And then it was the inside of the ark was also the budding staff of Aaron. Hear me, three various elements that speak to different parts of their journey. Inside of the ark there were first the tablets of testimony. These were copies of the law, or rather what you and I know as the 10 Commandments. They were housed there. They were stored there. Now, I get it. The reason why some of us have an issue with the 10 Commandments is because we typically only attribute commandments with being legalistic and strict when it comes to God. But I got to tell you something. In ancient Hebraic thought, they did not perceive the 10 Commandments the same way that you and I do. You see, in ancient Israel, their perception of the 10 Commandments was it was a collection of things of something called the Torah. You see, the Torah consisted of the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I have you to know that little boys, when they would go to school, would have to memorize the entirety of the Torah. Why? Because oftentimes, if you don't know where you came from, you can't have any in a compass on where you're trying to go. And so also the word Torah also translates to the word as guiding or guidance. In other words, their perception of these commandments were that they were the ways by which God chose for them to be guided in the midst of the wilderness. It was these rules and regulations by which the God that delivered them called for them to be guided. It was guidance. It was guidance for them. The law was their guide and their standard or metric for life. But then also remember, it's the manna that is there as well. The manna spoke to the provision of God in the wilderness. The provision of God in the wilderness, the manna. Remember, God feeds them in 2 different ways. He sometimes provides manna, but then sometimes he provides quail. But then there was also a stipulation with the manna and the quail. Remember, God says, I'm going to provide you enough manna and quail for 6 days. And on the 7th day, don't go touch any of the manna or the quail out there, even if there's some left over. Why? Because I'm trying to show you that if you can trust me with 6 days, I can handle 1 day. It's the manna that was there as well. But then finally, it's the budded staff of Aaron that was assigned to them, that ultimately that Aaron thought his life was about to be taken, but because the staff ended up budding, it was God's sign that he had divine favor on Aaron and the people that would come from Aaron. Notice what's in the box. I'll give it to you one more time. They have the 10 Commandments. They have the budding staff, but then they also have manna. I'm going to give it to you one more time. Inside of the box, they have the 10 Commandments. Then they have the staff, and then they also have manna. Now remember, I told you on last week that they are children of their ancestors, but God is not calling them to be like their ancestors. You see, because their ancestors lack of faith, they had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. But then in Joshua chapter 5, they undergo circumcision to take away the stain of Egypt, and they are walking in their new identity. But however, the ark is in the middle. While you may not be just like your ancestors, hear me, the ark is in the middle, and it demonstrates to them that while you may not be like your ancestors, you still need the God of your ancestors. Can I try that one more time? While you may not be like your ancestors, you do still need the God of your ancestors. Listen, family, y'all chose the 33-year-old pastor. I am a millennial. Yes, I'm on TikTok all the time. I'm always on Instagram. No, I don't want to be in church sometimes. Sometimes I'm at the Chris Brown concert. Sometimes I do things a little bit differently. But I got to tell y'all something. We got to be careful, my generation. We got to be careful sometimes, because just because they're older than you doesn't mean they don't know what you're going through. Because hear me, you got a corner office and your name on the door, but grandmama ain't had to take pills and medicine like you been because you got anxiety. I know you think that you got all the degrees on the wall, but when your baby gets sick, who do you call? Do you call call mama and grandmama, or do you call what happens sometimes? We got to understand that although we may not be like those before us, there still is a God of theirs that still shows up. Listen, I got to tell y'all this, and I'll probably tell y'all this a million of times. I have gone to school more than I would like. I have a bachelor's degree in pastoral ministry and biblical studies. I have a master's of divinity degree in ministry leadership from Baylor Truett Theological Seminary. I have a doctorate of ministry degree from United Theological Seminary. And I don't know, one of these days I may go back one more time. But you know what I was thinking about the other day? Here I am with all these degrees. I've written all these papers. I've gone all over the world preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. But you know, one day I was talking to my grandmama when I was on my way home. I left Waco, Texas, and it was about an 8 to 9 hour drive, about 841 miles for me to get from my apartment to my home. And when I was there, I got a call from Granny that said, grandmama said, hey son, I was praying for you and I want to let you know that everything is going to be all right. I said, hold on, grandmama. I said, Granny, I said, I hadn't even gotten on the road. She said, I know, but everything's going to be okay. I said, hold on, grandmama, I ain't even put gas in the car. She said, I know, son. She said, but everything's going to be okay. I said, but hold on, grandmama, I still ain't even stopped and got anything that I needed and put my bags in the car. She said, I know, son, but everything is going to be okay. I went and got in the car, drove all the way from Waco to Memphis, Tennessee. And when I pulled up at my parents' house, I got to thinking for a moment. I said, wait a minute, I got all these degrees. I got all this paper. I've written all these things, but I still don't have the faith of my grandmama to know that even before it happens, I don't know who I'm talking to. Is there anybody in here that can say that's the only reason I still made it? I pulled on the faith of some ancestors, and I pulled on the faith of those that came before me, because I don't care what you've been through in your life. I need a God that I can feel sometime. I'm done. The box is in the middle. It speaks, the box is in the middle, and it testifies. It testifies as to how God leads and guides a previous generation. And after undergoing a change of identity, God places the ark in the middle for full display so that they can know a few things. I'm in my seat, so y'all can go to brunch or wherever you're going. God places it in the middle because it demonstrates to them that the story has been in progress before you got here. Because the temptation of every new generation is to believe that the reason they are where they are is because of their own will and merit. However, there were those that bled and sacrificed prior to your arrival. And I told you earlier, that's why history is so important, because it reminds us of the journey of how we got to where we are. You know, I know down the street, I get it, family. Down the street, there are those that are holding a memorial for an individual that was known for spewing a certain type of speech, and that's all good. And we lament the fact of the manner in which he was killed in front of his family, and the manner in which he was killed in front of all of those that were there. And there were those that are in the church, and there were those all across social media that were worrying, because how in the world are we going to be able to combat white supremacy in this type of world? And I said, wait a doggone minute. Don't you know where you come from? Don't you know that we had HBCUs in the basements of our churches? Don't you know that we walked and marched in the midst of Selma, Alabama, across the Edmund Pettus Bridge? Don't you know that sanitation workers were still marching saying, I am a man? But you know why you ain't worried sometimes? It's because I got a pass that clarifies the God that I serve in the present. And I don't know about y'all, but that's why we ought to thank God for the God of our ancestors. We ought to thank God for the God of grandmama, and we ought to thank God for the God of granddaddy, because obviously they knew something to come through Jim Crow and the Middle Passage, and to go through Ronald Reagan's policies and the war on crime and the war on drugs. There means something to be connected to the generations before. Don't be confused, Joshua. You are only part of the story. The story is not beginning with you, Joshua. As a matter of fact, what you're walking in, Joshua, is the manifestation of what God promised to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. When God told Abraham, go to the land that I'm going to show you, he said this promise stretches all the way back to when Joseph was serving in Egypt and second in charge and saves the nation from famine. It goes all the way back to when Moses is pulled from the river and commissioned by God to go and deliver the people of Israel. You are the continuation of God's story, not the beginning of God's story. I'm going to try that one more time. You and I are the continuation of God's story, not the beginning of God's story. You and I are the continuation of a church that's celebrating 120 years. We are not the beginning of a church that celebrates 120 years. And maybe that's what some of our children need to learn. This thing didn't begin with you. This thing been going on a long time. And everything that you have is a result of those that come before. It reminds me of one of our favorite passages of scripture, Psalm 23. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Verse 4, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear. For why? Because you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Can we back up for a moment? I know we like to shout off of verse 4 that says that even though, yea, though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not be fearful. You got to ask yourself the question, hey, David, why are you not fearful? Why is it that you're not fearful? David said, well, back up, Rev, and go back to go back to verse 1. You see, in verse 1, God took care of me in green pastures. In verse 1, God took care of me in still waters. In verse 1, God took care of me when other things need to be taken care of. So in the midst, although the setting may change, it may not be in green pastures, but just because I get in the valley don't mean God gonna change. Just because I get into the darkness don't mean God gonna leave me. Just because I get into a place where I can't see don't mean God ain't gonna make a way. Who am I talking to today that can give God about 15 seconds of praise? Because although it may change, God says it, I'm still the same. God wants them to know this story is not beginning with you. It is the continuation with you. And hear me, the ark, the box, is a tangible representation of the divine presence of God by which God is going to meet God's people. And so even in warfare, they have to make sure that the ark is still visible. Because in the moments of discouragement, in moments of disappointment, if I can look up and see the ark, if I can look up and see the box, it is a living indicator to me that if God did it before, he's able to do it again. I got more sermon, but I think that's going to be my exit ramp right there. I said he's got more that he can do it again. Is there anybody in here that can say, I thank God that God is a God of an encore? That whatever God did in my life last year, I can trust that he's able to do it again this year. That whatever God did for my grandparents, that God is able to still be able to do it again right now. Will you help me me today and turn to a neighbor and say, neighbor, I said, neighbor, I want you to know that I am a living witness that God can still do it, that I am a living witness that God can still turn it around, that I'm a living witness that God can still make a way. If you believe it, help me one last time. Turn. I said turn one more time, and I'm in my seat, and grab the same neighbor that you just put your hands on and said, neighbor, I got to give you my testimony. I got to give you what God has done for me. But said, neighbor, before I give it to you, I need you to still look at me the same. I need you to still worship with me. I need you to still believe that God's hand is on me. But say, neighbor, matter of fact, don't worry about it. Say, neighbor, because if you really knew everything I've been through, you give God praise on my behalf. But since you don't know, and since you may not even care, I'll give him praise by myself. I lift up hands. I dance in the church. I run around this building because we've been made endure for the night. But God,
family, thank you so much for making the decision to watch and be with us this entire time. If this has been a blessing to you, do us a favor. Come and be a member. Join us wherever you are in the world. If you want to be a member in person, you can always come and join us at First Institutional. Or if you want to be a member virtually, you can definitely put your information in the comments and we will get with you. Also, take the time and consider sowing into our ministry. We are trying to do some amazing things here, and God has called us to the valley and the beyond. And guess what? We can only do it through your help. I love you. I'll see you next time. Living Purpose on Purpose, Pastor Ty. Next week, I'll see you.